What's up, everybody? Welcome to week episode, whatever you want to call it, number 6 of the Aftershow, a little project we're doing here to kind of follow up our teachings from this amazing series we've been doing. It's just been amazing. I know it's been blowing your minds. You're just like, this is the greatest series I've ever been a part of in church, called Faith for Exiles. It's a book by a guy named David Kinnaman and another guy named Mark Matlock, and they've taken some stuff from Barna Research Group and helped us talk about discipleship here in Canada. And we've been doing this midweek show. Here we are. It's presented by Poster. We have a sponsor. We have plants in the back. We have smiling faces around the horn. How's everybody doing? You guys doing okay?
Okay.
Looking good. Everybody's looking good. Like summer, is in full swing. Anybody sad that summer is like kind of winding down now? Like we're into August.
We're not even halfway through.
Well, it's first week of August. I mean, it is what it is. We have NFL training camps going, which is good, and sports, and not a lot of people care, but it's all good. Hey, tell me this. Besides, we've talked about all sorts of fun stuff over the weeks between Hermione Granger, how do you say it, Kev? Hermione Granger, man, every time I screw it up. To, lions devouring stuff. Tell me this. Kendra.
I actually have a question for you, Drew, for the caller. Because you talked about sleepwalking.
Okay.
And it just occurred to me just before we started recording that, do you ever, use... I have a reason for asking this, okay?
No, I love it.
Do you ever, use the washroom in your sleep, while you're sleepwalking?
Okay, so I haven't. I sleepwalk frequently, but I'm almost I'm almost in a daze now. I've shared recently. When I sleepwalk, I get into a daze, and I partly come awake as I'm doing it. And Heather argues with me. She will say, "Drew, you're sleeping," and I'll argue back, "No, I'm not." And then I come to, and then we argue. She's like, "Dude, you're sleeping." "No, I'm not." So no, I haven't. But I got a good story about my brother when he was younger. So when we were little, we lived in a house where Mike and our room was across the hall from our TV room. And one night at, he was 5 or something. One night my parents were watching TV in the TV room. In between those two rooms was the bathroom. And Mike woke up, walked by the bathroom, went into the TV room, flipped up the lid of the toy box, and just went pee right in the toy box, which is amazing. So Mike, if you're watching, I've not gone to the level of going to the bathroom in my sleepwalking, but he's done it before, which is terribly embarrassing, and there's a story for the world to know. Our huge listenership. You can just at him.
I have a reason for asking, Drew, which is that I recently woke up, and in the morning whole story, and in the morning there was a bat in my toilet.
What?
Yeah, and it's a frequent thing that happens, I found out. And the PSA is to turn on the light in the bathroom before you sit down, because there could be a bat in your toilet.
That is terrifying.
100%, I kid you.
What do you mean? What do you mean it's
why
frequent?
Why would you say that?
Wait, what do you mean by it's frequent?
It's frequent in Wortley. Let's just leave it there.
No, I need to know now. Is it frequent? Are they saying is it frequent in Wortley, or is this everywhere?
I'm a scaredy cat, so I had to get somebody else to get the bat out for me.
Oh my gosh, I would be.
It was in your toilet?
It was in my toilet, because when its wings get wet, it can't fly. So they fall in.
Oh my.
And they get stuck, which is terrifying.
I mean, the guy who came being stuck.
I know.
In one spot.
Well,
because it's not that it's flying and then it's harder to catch.
But when you said you had to get somebody to take it out, why didn't you just flush it?
Because it was alive.
Oh.
And so I was afraid of it being and then plugging everything out.
You have way more of a heart than I would have. The first thing I would have done, man, I'm just going to go out there and it is.
My heart was beating out of my chest. But the guy who came to get it out, I was like, whoa, there was a bat in my toilet. Why aren't we freaking out about this? And he was like, oh, it happens all the time.
What?
They fall in, he said.
That is insane.
You go close
I
to the
am
bathroom.
never going to wake up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom now.
She's just going to pee the
Do it, but do it quick. Do a quick sweep.
I'm never pooping again.
I was like, if I had to get rabies shots in my butt, I would never. I would need to use like a pee bag all the time. Like,
yeah.
I would
just
never.
Just a colostomy bag. You just go for it.
Yes, thank you. That's what it's called. I was like, never sitting down again.
If only you could be like JoJo, who just goes wherever. Don't worry about a toilet. Just go wherever.
Or Mike, apparently.
yeah, Mike too. Yeah.
Going back to the sleepwalking thing. I don't know. On Netflix, there's like this comedy special by a guy by name Mike Birbiglia.
Okay.
He has a really bad case of sleepwalking to the point where like he'll injure himself.
Oh.
So apparently what he has to do is there's like is it like a sleep sack? Or it's basically what it is. It's like a...
Hems him in?
Well,
yeah, exactly.
So it just his head.
Arms as well.
So it just zips him in, but it goes around the whole bed. So it's almost like a sheet that goes around the bed, but it's just his head. So apparently he was saying the reason it got so, but like he has to sleep by himself, like he can't sleep with his wife. He has to, like, he's just a danger.
Wow.
I guess one time he was at a hotel, and he threw himself through a hotel window and sliced his leg while he was sleeping. I'm like, that's crazy. Sleepwalking can get pretty crazy for people.
Yeah.
That is intense.
I've always had like certain worries that, but I'm always, my sleepwalking is always like I said, it's always kind of there. Like kind of alert, kind of, it's really hard to explain. Like, I'll get like, if I have something on my mind, I'll get overly worried. So like I had something on my mind maybe 6 weeks ago, and I kept looking out the window and like
the lions.
Like,
it was a lion.
It wasn't lions that night, but it was like, I was looking out the blinds, like, Heath, they're there. Drew, go back to sleep. You're sleeping. No, like, so I'm partly like talking to her, knowing I'm talking to her, but it's like, Heath, they're there. Drew, go back to sleep. You're sleepwalking. No, but seriously, I think they're out there. So I'm like, there's some cognition. It's weird. Anyways, I've always worried about like, what do you do if you're like walking, you get in a car somewhere, or you walk downtown or something like that. Crazy.
I don't sleepwalk, and a few times what happens to me is if I'm like super, super tired and I'm laying and I'm sleeping, and then if you wake me from the deep sleep, beware, because there's something in me that just rages. Like I'm screaming and
no.
Oh man!
Actually jumped out of bed and I mean,
I want to see this.
And I have to be careful. Like, no danger. You're okay.
That's funny. I want to see it. I want to see it sometime. Get a video going.
I don't realize I'm doing that in the moment.
Yeah.
But it's so vivid that I remember like almost every second of it.
So funny.
It's hilarious.
Humans are amazing. That's all I gotta say. Anyways, you're watching the Aftershow, episode 6, presented by Poster. Great to have you here. All right, let's talk about this. Worst job you've ever had. Do we have some bad jobs around the horn here?
Worst.
Yeah.
Try selling credit card insurance.
Yeah. Okay.
You're there. Yeah.
About a year or so.
Okay. And is this in London?
Pardon me?
Was this in London?
This is in London.
Yeah. Okay.
One of my first jobs.
Yeah.
Here in Canada. Yep.
Nice.
Credit card insurance.
Nice.
BPI.
And any others? Got some good ones or what? Bad jobs? Dirty jobs? I think that's a show, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
it wasn't terrible. I was a nanny for a summer to a 2-year-old and a 6-month-old.
Okay.
And it was a little hard. Hard. Didn't love it, but
Yeah.
not terrible. Just not great.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah, very young.
Kendra, any bad jobs?
I've had great jobs, but some bad experiences in those jobs. I feel like
Okay.
that's like more common.
Yeah.
In university, I cooked for a family.
Okay.
It was like an ad on Kijiji. I've got some weird jobs off Kijiji. Mostly playing piano for like weddings and like weird events. Those are awesome.
Okay.
But this one was like they were looking for a university student to cook for their family on weekdays, and this family was just kind of nuts.
Wow. So, like, you went into their
who's
house.
Nuts? The person who answered the ad.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, but I'm like, we all know that I'm nuts, right? Like.
But hold on.
I
So,
was
like,
like,
you're
I'm not a chef, but I can cook what my mama taught me.
so you're cooking, and like, so you go into their house. Are they there?
Yeah.
Like, they're there when you're cooking.
Yeah.
That's a little weird.
Well, sometimes.
Yeah.
I knew where the key was, so I would just go at some point during the day. And they weren't like, it wasn't even an extravagant house or anything. They just were super lazy. And so they hired me to cook for them.
There you go. Interesting. Well, now we know. Now we know.
I'm not even that great.
Any other bad jobs? Any horrible jobs? No?
No.
Kev, no, I work for, so when go ahead, Kev.
No. No, I mean, I've worked in some brutal kitchens.
Yeah.
That sucked. But outside of that, I mean, nothing too bad. I mean, I've done like farm chores and stuff, and that's horrible. Like shoveling horse manure and stuff, which I'll never do again in my life. But I guess if you're talking about like bad jobs, that was a pretty bad job. That was just one time, but that's
a poopy job. Eh?
That was a pretty crappy job. Yeah.
Love it.
So Nicole, I can't believe you haven't said anything about this. Maybe it wasn't the worst job for you, but she worked in M&M chocolate factory.
Oh yes, that's right.
And where she packed M&Ms, I think.
Packed all kinds of chocolates. Like, yeah.
That's terrible. That sounds great.
Yeah, and I would work night shifts. I did. I wasn't a fan. You literally stand there and you watch conveyor belts of chocolates going by. Because what you're doing is you're doing quality assessment. So you're just literally standing there watching Twix bars go by and making sure there's 2 Twix bars as they go. Like,
oh man.
Is it the kind of thing that you like hate chocolate afterward though? Like you've seen too much?
No, never.
Okay. Yeah. That'd be bad.
That's what makes it the worst.
Yes, and you know what? Why maybe I didn't think it was the worst, because actually you're allowed to eat as much chocolate as you want on shift.
Oh man,
so
that's what I was gonna say. That would be the hard part. Yeah.
And be pulling Twix bars off the conveyor belt. You're filling, you know, the M&M bag. You know bags of M&Ms that you get?
I do.
Okay, so you know how people measure? Oh, this one feels heavier than that one. Oh, it totally is. People like me work there who would be like standing there waiting for it to fill, and you're supposed to pull the lever to make the bag close, and you're like, oh shoot, too long.
That's amazing. My shift, there'd be a lot of Twix bars missing. So where was that, in the States?
Yeah, I was in the States, down south in Tennessee.
That's an amazing job. That is an amazing job.
I guess it was. I thought she hated it.
That's funny. So in Australia, I lived in Australia for a year, and I was working while I was there. So I worked I did telemarketing for a roller shutter company, which was fantastic. But by the end, because I was a part of this Bible college, like leadership college thing, and it was all like students from that ended up at this place. And by the end, a couple friends would laugh at this so hard. By the end, we had just given, like, by the end of the year, and I knew I was leaving, we just kind of like tapped out. And so, and I don't suggest this, work hard to the end, okay? The moral of the story is work hard to the end, but we just didn't do that. And so we would call people, and if you knew it was like an elderly person or whatever, we would say, hey, do you want to buy some? And I would try and say it quickly, and we'd like dare each other to say roller pooper, but not pooper, roller crapper, but the real word. We'll just keep it, PG here. Would you like to buy a roller crapper? But you get what I'm saying. The other word instead of shutter. Another word,
Yeah, we got it. Yeah.
Anyways, so yeah, I was a big. I sold a lot of roller crappers in the end. There, it was great. Yeah. Anyways, yeah, Kathy, go.
No, I just remembered. I've done like random, like literally just one shift at several jobs.
Right. Nice.
And like something else came up, or I decided it was not for me. But I've done it like at one shoe store.
Yeah.
Danny Leather, literally just one shift. And then another one, I packed freezer meals, but we were working inside a freezer, and like I did 4 hours, and I was like, no, I can't.
You're like, I'm
Just
going.
went home for lunch and didn't go back.
Went home for lunch. That is so
This
funny.
wasn't even that long ago.
That's great.
No one told me that when we started Poster that you'd flake.
Oh, yeah.
It's been a year, so
Okay, good.
Longer than that.
If you just see Kendra, or if you just see Kathy all of a sudden just walking away, you're like, oh, yep, freezer girl
We got
right
a
there.
job.
I knew it. So funny.
I remember a job that Drew used to have, and I'm not afraid to say because the company is now bankrupt.
For
He used
sure.
to work at Max.
I did work at Mex. I did.
Yeah.
Sold
What's
some
Mex?
suits. It
Mex
was
is
like,
an old- it's
kind of like
clothing company,
Banana
yeah.
Republic kind of deal, like suits and maybe not Banana Republic. It was like suits and like more either high
clothing?
casual or dressy clothes. Yeah. So I worked there. Yeah. Just
was a long
grinding
time
away,
ago, yeah.
selling suits. It's all good. This week, the practice is work and vocation. And man, if you have been a part of the City View praxis story, we have talked about work a lot the last decade. I love this. It's no surprise that we are, over the next few minutes, going to talk about work and vocation, and there's going to be no surprise that we are going to obliterate this idea that work should be disconnected or bad or not worship. Just to get it out of the bag right away, we fundamentally as a community have talked for years that actually one of the primary places of worship for us is our work. And there's challenges with that, and some of even the jokes we give about certain jobs and different things. And so I think this will be I've really appreciated just the dialogue and discussion with you guys and hearing just over these principles and practices. It's been really great to put the church in the people's hands and hear from you guys. What do you think? Work, vocation, worship. Do you think these things are connected? What do you think even about some of the things that you read as far as the data showing that people who are fulfilled in their jobs, that's actually a big part of being a resilient disciple and living that out? Did that surprise you? Or was that like oh yeah, we know this type of deal? What do you think? Jumping at once. Well, let me put it like this. In the teaching on Sunday, we talked about, we just basically gave, after all the data and showing that, the church needs to release people to work. That was the big idea in the chapter. There was 3 major assumptions that we kind of made from both the chapter and our idea of work and worship at Praxis. And one of them is what you do is deeply integrated with who you are. I think we need to. So do you guys hear this? People will say, well, it's what's important is who you are, not what you do. Do you buy that? Because I hear that and I kind of understand it, but then there's part of me that's like, I'm not sure how that's how that works. Do you get what I'm saying? People will say it's about who you are, it's not about what you do, and I'm kind of like, can you disconnect those two things?
I like to say that I am more than the job that I do.
Ooh, Kendra, I'm telling you, straight fire every week. Say it again. Say it again for our listeners at home.
Because I never talk to anyone else. I like to say that I'm more than the job that I do or the work that I do.
Love that. Yep.
Right? So it's not like, it's just that my whole identity can't be my work.
For sure. There's a danger there, 100%.
Yeah, and there's even like a reality just like logistically to that becoming your entire life. But that it does play a big part in who I am. And I have the privilege, I would say too, as an educated person, of choosing a job that is like my personal brand.
Yep.
that I quite like and enjoy. And I don't think everybody gets that necessarily, even though everybody can enjoy their job.
Yep. And we talked about that on Sunday in the teaching, that Paul is very clear. You got to provide for your family. Like you've got to work hard. This is actually a theme in the New Testament, and sometimes that work can be crappy, no pun intended, with the roller poopers. But that sometimes doesn't maybe intersect with vocation. Vocation, we talked on Sunday, and they talk in the book, is a calling. Sometimes for people, those two things, they get paid for their vocation. I think in the reality of the fall, and again, if you want to listen back, this is all new to you and you're listening into this, listen to Sunday's teaching. We talk about how sometimes those things intersect, sometimes they don't. Sometimes our work we don't feel like is as much as our calling. And we've always said as a church, try and work towards, if you can, work towards that. And sometimes that means not making as much money as you'd like because of doing what you feel called to. Vocation is this calling. It's just interesting around, I get what you're saying, Kendra. I think actually, though, the danger within the church is we don't value our work enough. I think the danger, and maybe I hate to call it this, but the secular world is people, money, status are working. But sometimes in the church, we, again, say things like, what I do is not who I am. Any other thoughts? Any other thoughts? Because I think Kendra did a great job there.
It's funny you mentioned that point, Kendra, because I had it in my mind just before you spoke about this, but I've always thought it interesting that one of the first things that when you meet somebody for the first time, one of the first things that they ask you is, what is it that you do? That's one of the first things they ask you after asking you for your name. What's your name? And then almost immediately what follows is, what is it that you do? So there's almost this connection in people's minds about who you are and what it is that you do. I actually think that, like to Kendra's point, that you're more than that. And I used to hate that question when I was asked it, because it was like, I think it's a little bit superficial, and I'm more than just whatever I do for my day job, and I want to talk about something else. And some people I've worked with do not like to talk about work, like in social settings.
Yeah.
Like you hang out with them, they're like, no, we're not talking about work. Work it's a rule, actually. Some of my former colleagues, they're like, no, it's a rule. We don't talk about work.
Yeah.
While we're hanging out. So it's interesting. For some people, it's out of bounds. More than that. But I think there's also the reality that some people do love what they do, and it's a big part of who they are. And we spend most of our waking time at work.
Mm-hmm.
Our livelihood, so to speak. Work is our livelihood, so to speak. But it certainly doesn't, I don't think, for the most part, make who we are.
Yeah. It's interesting because I'm in the middle in the sense, and I love the feedback. My concern would be is like a downplaying of work, like in the Christian worldview or the Jesus following worldview, that it being our worship. And I think we've got to also lean into the Genesis story, which we don't have time for here, obviously, but the primary form of worship for proto-human, Adam and Eve in the garden, was not going to church services to be really spiritual, though the church service, like gathering as a church, is amazing, but was to fill the earth and to work, to name, actually take responsibility, to name the things around them and co-rule with God. My tension is we can lose that a bit. And we'll talk about work and vocation and the difference in a bit in a minute. Again, as I've said, like for some of us, we're in roles where we are being paid for our vocation, and others of us are not. And again, I think part of that is because we live in a world that's broken. Part of what you see in the Genesis account as well is that, through the curse, there's toil and tears and blood and sweat in work. Now, what was beautiful is not that it's not beautiful anymore. There's just toil with it. My concern a little bit sometimes is what people want to disconnect from that a bit. You know, it was interesting. A few years ago, a guy named John Beliveau, who was a wonderful Montreal Canadiens hockey player, older guy, had passed away. And I was driving around. This is when I used to listen to radio, kind of before podcasting. And the guy on the radio in town here said, John Beliveau has passed away, and he did a segment on the radio, and people were calling in. And the guy on the radio said this. He said, you know what? Even if Jean Beliveau wasn't this great Montreal Canadian, we would still know who he is because he's a fantastic guy and this and that. And I was kind of driving along going, no, we wouldn't. We wouldn't. We probably wouldn't. Just because John Beliveau is a nice guy, what we know him as is connected to his life's work, which was an athlete. I think actually we got to stop apologizing for that. That's who he was designed to be, and that's kind of why we know him. And I think, what did you say again? To say it again, Kendra, as far as like you brought good perspective there again, as far as your work is not.
I am more than the work that I do.
I'm more than the work that I do. I like that because the work that it's not that the work that we do or our vocation is unimportant.
Doesn't negate that.
Yeah, I love that. That is such a great perspective. All right, so that was one point, is just like what you do is deeply connected to who you are, and we got to be careful to disconnect that. The second kind of theme that we talked about was that the sacred secular divide. So this idea that some things are sacred and other things are secular, that divide needs to be shattered into a bazillion pieces. So we're shaped in the West by Neoplatonism. So in that idea that the soul is good and the body is bad, I even had to confront this in my children this week. So it's great. They talk about heaven a lot. And Judah and Ava are getting it. In their language, they, like Judah said a few months ago, when heaven comes to earth, that's how he's talking about heaven. And I'm like, there's a lot of things screwed up in my life, but you're getting it. This is great. But Levi had these interesting, it was just yesterday, had these interesting ideas about going away to heaven, kind of like a more disembodied deal. It's interesting because I was thinking as he was talking, like, I wonder where you got that from. But one of the things we talked about on Sunday is that like the spiritual, churchy stuff often we view in the church is good and important, but everything else is kind of bad, or we're just getting through. So we talked about how the problem in the Old Testament is there's really no word for spiritual, that you have your life. What do you think about that? Like the the sacred secular kind of divide. Do you see that at play where certain things are viewed as spiritual and other things are not?
Yeah, and I think kind of bringing it to vocation also specifically, and how this is sometimes I feel like really a conflict as well in some of the vocations we choose to do.
Yep.
When it comes to how you integrate again the secular with the sacred in your workplace. For me personally, I've especially seen that even more so now in the work that I'm doing. So I just started a new job a couple months ago as an equity, diversity, and inclusion specialist. And with all the anti-racism stuff going on, obviously it's my work and it's my personal life and it's my, it's like all my worlds kind of collided all at once, because it's everything I do at work, and then it's everything people are talking about outside of my work as well. And what was interesting for me was navigating the way in which, as a Christian, I'm supposed to respond to some of these issues, some of these social justice issues. And it was a really, really interesting time too, because in some cases I felt a little bit of judgment, because in my work as well, it's very foundational to social justice. And among social justice issues is the fact that I support LGBTQ2S+. Both in my work and in my personal conviction, right? And I know that conflicts a lot with, I would say, some of my more conservative peers in the church who don't understand how you can actually intersect being a Christian and doing this work.
Yeah.
Right. And for me, it was kind of a pretty simple thing, but I realized, kind of more recently how some people think that you actually can't. So essentially, as a Christian, you can't really be working in social justice because you can't be fighting for the rights of certain people because in the in the church it's viewed differently, or that's conflicting to your Christian beliefs. How can you be both?
Sure.
And so kind of looking at the secular and sacred, it's kind of interesting because I can understand how maybe some Christians wouldn't be able to do this work in that way.
Yeah.
I feel I found a comfortable space of where I'm at to be able to do this work, to be able to bring them both in together. And for me, my conviction and kind of in the work I do, I don't see them conflicting.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know.
Interesting. I think, yeah, no, one of the things, the posture of the secular sacred thing, I think for most folk is getting people to see what they're putting their hands to as spiritual, as, important. And I think that's a big thing in this conversation that sometimes people need help with. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think it's important. It's interesting what you're talking about, those two worlds colliding. But I think for a lot of folk too, they just need to hear the worship component of what we do. And again, the Platonic idea was like the body is a prison to the soul, so your body doesn't matter as much. There was this divide, and then you look at biblical Christianity and you're like, that actually is not the story. That this idea of work and vocation is one that is very much viewed, and Paul in the New Testament viewed this as one of the highest forms of worship, and what you do with your hands, your mind, whatever you're doing. It's so that when we talk about things that oftentimes are just ingrained beliefs, I think that's one of them that kind of has been perpetuated from generation to generation in evangelicalism that could probably be pushed back on in a good way. Like, hey, your work, actually what you do matters. Anyone want to speak to like what when it doesn't feel like your job, like what you get paid to do is your vocation? Because I think many of us have experienced that and or are experiencing that. Do you get what I mean by that? Like kind of the divide between like, man, vocation kind of being a calling, vocation being a calling, but sometimes it's like I've got to do the grind here of 9 to 5 or whatever it is, or 7 to 7 to pay the bills, to do as well what I love, which is outside of what I get paid for. Have we had these experiences?
It like depends on what you mean by calling.
Yeah.
Like I think people define that differently.
Go there.
That's a good point, Kendra. So I think it depends on how you define calling. Is your calling to just be a good worker, show up and look at the conveyor belt and make sure that everything is straight and that you pull the lever right on time for that package to be filled up correctly, right? And because that's maybe the only interaction that you get with human beings.
Yep.
Or is it your calling to, I don't know, maybe your job intersects with your personal life, or maybe you have a lot of people contact. I think it just depends on the nature of your work. My work specifically is very project based in terms of I work on technology projects. I do work with some people, and the products oftentimes is a product that we're working to try to implement, and the nature of it is limited to that. I do have interactions with people, but they're limited in terms of we're just referring to the work that we're doing, really. And then there's little opportunity, especially in this virtual space, and you're going to see this more and more, I think, as you go forward in the future. For instance, my work just announced that we're going to be staying at home for the next for at least the rest of the year, and probably until sometime into next year as well. And looking at the future, 50% of our workforce is going to be work from home. So there's going to be a reduced interaction with people with the work that I do. So yeah, is it where does, I guess, my calling intersect with I guess with the work that I do? I don't know. But I think in that sense, for me, I'm called to do the best job that I can, to, I guess, represent Christ the best that I can in what I do. And, I enjoy it. I enjoy my work. I enjoy the flexibility that I have, things like that. But I think it's just different for everybody.
Sure.
I think growing up in the church, I always pushed back on the idea of vocation. It was annoying to me because there was always those jobs that were kind of like holy, like, are you called to be a pastor? Are you called to be a missionary? Are you called to be a pastor's wife? And I was like, no, I don't. Like, you can have a job that is not one of those things, and it can still be done, with integrity and as a good Christian. And I think that, I don't like that term, good Christian, but you know what I mean. Yeah. And I don't think I was called to, work in events, but I love it.
Yep.
And I think that I'm using God-given talents. I don't think it's totally fulfilling. I don't know what else would be right now, but I think that they're, the way that I interact with my colleagues, the kind of events I put on, I can still live out my faith in what I do. I don't know. I've always had an issue when it's like, are you called? And I'm like, no, I'm not called.
Okay.
But I'm doing it and I love it and I do it well.
Yeah. No, it's good. I'm glad you brought up the kind of what we view as ministry kind of stuff and the over glorification of that. So somebody asked me, somebody asked me, do you want your kids to be pastors? Somebody asked me the question.
Do you want your kids to be pastors?
Thanks, Kev. I'm glad you asked. You know what? I'm not sure. I'm just being honest. I'm just being completely honest. And it's not because it's a great calling or an amazing vocation. I say that because my jerk reaction right now is we have viewed certain things as holier than others. And I think if Heather's here too, we don't buy into that as much as maybe not even that we once did, but have kind of been in a culture where there's certain things that are better spiritually. And now on the other side, so I have a son who is quite drawn to church and church life and music and just drawn to that, the way he talks. And honestly, if he came and said, listen, I want to do this with my life, we would obviously 100%. But I do think there's something with 100% support him and if it was Ava too or whoever. But man, there's been something lost. And so I'm in a generation of line of pastor dudes, which is amazing. I'm super thankful for that. But I also, that's outside of that is not any less, And so this has been a huge wrestling for us in the sense of there's almost been seasons where I've very much gone the other way, where you don't need to do this because everything you put your hands to is God's work and where he's leading you, which is absolutely true. So I almost have to come back the other way to be more open to it, purely because I've tried to fight and almost rebel against some of the bad ideas of what you're saying. Yeah, for sure. And this is even, not to make this about my story, but this is even right down to the roots of we have decided to stay in London. And pastors have been known, and this is great, this is fine. Pastors have been known to move a lot and go a lot of places, and kind of in denominations, there's kind of a corporate ladder where you move around to kind of get up. And I don't say this arrogantly, we've had a ton, fantastic opportunities, but we just have said, we are staying in London, a city that we love and a people that we love, and how even in that frame, it's kind of pushed against this idea of, again, certain ministry positions being better than other things when it comes to spirituality, stuff like that. Does this make sense? Are you following me? I just feel like trying to buck the trend in that sense. So I've always tried to think through my kids, just that, the danger we can create where the pastor dude is better or whatever. We can let these things creep in.
And I think good to add on to that, growing up in a pastor's house, I think there's been a massive change in the idea of there's certain ages that a certain pastor can be. Like a youth pastor can only be in the ages of 20 to 30. And then like an associate pastor is between the ages of 30 and 40. And then a senior pastor is 40 plus. And I think that changes, and it should change, that mindset in the sense of, I think somebody, depending on your maturity in a relationship, I think you can be young and lead a church.
Yep.
I think you can be old and still lead younger people, middle-aged people. I don't think, and I think it has to do more with passion and your just ability and you're good at it. Like I've known people that are, in their 40s that do really good work when it comes to younger people. And that's not that thing hasn't been like you've aged yourself out. Now you're only responsible for people that your age or older.
Yep.
To me, I mean, it could be wrong, but I mean, I just think that's gone, and I don't think it should be a thing.
Yeah. So good. I agree. And, again, going back, like sometimes, like pastors, missionaries, whatever, will move a lot in different things. It's just always the motive behind that of like trying to maybe climb a ladder. And it's interesting when you posture yourself, you're like, you know what? A people in a place, it's changed us a lot in just the way we view things for even our own family. Where I would say a number of years ago, it'd be prestigious for your kids to follow in your footsteps. And if they want to do that, that's amazing. But sometimes, not in my case, my parents were great, but like sometimes there can be a pressure in that sometimes that doesn't need to be. And that's just the ministry side of things. So trying to get people to get our community to see whatever you're doing is so important. The third kind of takeaway was just our work matters. And it's a theological statement because God is not throwing this world out. And I think there's a devaluing, and I would love to maybe hear from you what you think about this, a devaluing of work in the hands of Christians because of a narrative that says God is throwing this world out. And that's just not true. That's not, well, we don't know everything about heaven, but we know Jesus is coming to set up shop here. Now, I have all sorts of ideas that we can get into at another time. But do you think this idea that like, this place is just going to explode and we're going to go somewhere else has affected the idea that we're actually called to steward and take the world forward, which is actually the call for humans in God's good world? It's a wordy question, but do you think that bad theology has now kind of messed up people's ideas of work in the present where we are?
I'm just thinking back to the statistics that they give as well. Yeah. The fact that resilient disciples are the ones who are the most fulfilled in their work.
Yeah.
Or tend to be the ones who are most fulfilled in their work. So I would say no then, for that reason.
Okay. Yeah. So on the resilience, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, the resilience. It kind of in thinking of that, like in that way, if the Christians who are the sort of the most committed and into their relationship to God are the ones who tend to say that they are fulfilled within their vocations, then it would lead me to think that maybe not, that they are valuing the here and the now simultaneously.
Okay. So for resilient disciples is what you're saying.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if because then in the other direction, right, the nomads and the others were the ones who had less fulfillment in their vocations, who said that they had found less fulfillment in their vocations. So then, do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I wonder if that is then the opposite, rather, that, we as resilient Christians or resilient disciples have found meaning here and are looking for, like, we have a hope of here to kind of fix the here and the now in what we're doing and through everything that we do. So therefore we, we see it as not as, oh, the world's going to whatever, so what does it matter? I don't like my job, I'm just going to do whatever in my job. Like, I kind of see it as we are the ones who are kind of putting our everything into it, and using every opportunity we can to glorify God in what we do. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But I 100% agree. I guess what I think about is I think about the other 90%. If 10% are resilient disciples, I think of the other large majority, and I wonder maybe what the root of some of this could be. Sometimes I wonder if it's bad theology. Again, I think one of the things, I think we even said it in the teaching, is like the worst is like sometimes with churches, what we can do is, you have like a doctor or a lawyer or a teacher or whoever, whatever kind of, wherever you work, marketer or somebody works at TD or whatever, they come in to the church, and sometimes we can say, well, the sum of your life is to hand out a bulletin on Sundays. Like this is what the church, like, man, we've got something for you. And not that we don't have bulletins, but not that these kind of jobs don't need to be done in the church. We need people serving on every level. I think one of the tensions oftentimes is it just kind of ends at that. You have so many, look at, not to pump all your tires, but look at the incredible gifts, talents, abilities, even around this group. The church has to take a responsibility to say, go into the world and live. And this is a big part of your worship. It's important. And I think I do think there is what you're saying, Nicole, is so true. Like the resilient disciples get this. Their expression is, I've been in environments where I begin to see that my work intersects, like faith and culture, my work, it all works together. But I would say that's obviously not the majority. It's, a lot of folk miss it. And I think part of it is sometimes the theology the church can tell, where it's like, we need to get people to heaven. And then you're like, well, this started in a garden and heaven is coming here. Jesus is going to usher heaven in here. And you get the sense when you look at work and vocation in its totality that we're taking the world forward as we should be in the things that we do. It is hard at times because you're probably listening, by the way, you're listening to episode 6 of the Aftershow presented by Poster. Some of you are probably listening and go, man, like my job right now completely disconnects. It's hard work. It's not fulfilling. And there is the reality of that. It's hard. And many of us have been there in places and spaces. One of the things I would say is, as we are a foretaste of the kingdom, the hope is that those things can overlap and that work can become vocation and calling and working our ways towards that. There is, I'll say from personal experience, sometimes there's pain in that because maybe I've talked to people like this, maybe what you're called to do, you make less money than what can seem like the meaningless job that will pay you well. And how many people feel this tension? The meaningless job actually covers my bills and pays me well, but there's this thing I want to do. But I also think there is beauty. I was talking to my friend Mike a few weeks ago. He's a counselor here in town, and he was just lit up just about his job, and being able to serve other people in that way. I think of other people, even in our own church. Like I think of Corrine and Dan. These they work in finance, and it's their life mission to help families. Or you guys know Nate Rundle. Nate is such a great guy. Shout out to Nate. That guy is in a place and space in his life where his job, what he gets paid for, is really like a life calling and helping people. And I even think of Heather, I may have to edit this out because we made a kind of a blood oath that we wouldn't talk about her job very much just because of, what it is and whatnot. And, but just even to see her thrive in an environment of being able to help people. It's her life's mission to be able to help people. She honestly, obviously money comes with work, but it's funny to watch somebody thrive in what they do and really money be the last thing that they even, for her, seeing her just work for people and just serve people and do what you love to do. There can be that. And I just, as an encouragement to anybody that's listening, you may not feel like you're in a season like that, but I think for some of us, as we look down the road, it could be. And I've always said to people, maybe that just means a life adjustment or whatever. But it's just, this whole conversation is quite interesting. Any other thoughts about the chapter of the book? Disconnect? Do you feel what do you think? I don't know. No thoughts as I ramble on.
Yeah, I mean, just to reiterate some of the points you made and some of the things that have been said here tonight. It's I think there's something to be said about defining what calling means, what vocation means. I think at the end of the day, what you're trying to do through work is to, number one, I think, do the best that you can based on having the values that we get from the Bible and from Scripture and from what God has given us to do our jobs well. So I think that's, no matter where you are, no matter what kind of work you do, I think just being able to implement those values, I think is the first really sign. If we were to look for signs of Christians in the workplace, that would be it. Is to look at those values that 100% good workers. So I think no matter what you do for work, whether or not it intersects with your personal life or your faith, I think that's important. And then, obviously you have those people whose jobs intersect with their, I guess, personal lives and faith and things like that. That's great. And some people can work towards that. But there's also, I think, a section of people that do important work, but it doesn't necessarily translate to, I guess, the traditional Christian view of vocation, and that's quite okay as well. I think of myself, for instance. The work that I do, I like it. I love it, actually. I've always dreamed of working in this kind of environment that I'm doing right now, but that is not I feel like necessarily that's my vocation.
Yeah.
Do outside of it, though, is what I feel like is my vocation right now. Coaching and mentoring a group of young men. I feel like I don't get paid for it, but I feel like that's where I'm called to be. And there's no money exchange there, but that's that's where I feel like I make the most impact.
And that is exactly that's probably one of the best examples. Yeah. And exactly kind of what we mean and what we're talking about. Just seeing in your life, and there's others that have a passion for something, and it may not be able to support them financially right now, but that calling is there, and that's what I mean. I can't say from the teaching, Parker Palmer. He's kind of a mystic Quaker. He talks about letting your life speak, letting your life lead you into vocation is, I think, an important concept and idea. And that may be what, again, we're kind of reiterating, that may be what you are paid to do, and it may not. But I do think calling, the church needs to be a place that just propels people into their calling. And so as we think deeply about that, I think it's an important discussion for sure. And I appreciate the insight around here, this idea of like maybe not going too far the one way to say what I am and what I do is disconnected, kind of this thing that has emerged that a lot of people say, well, it's about who I am, not what I do, but thinking deeper than I'm dividing those things, thinking theologically again about what God's doing in the world. All these things are important. And as a dialogue, I think that continues to need to be said and had over the next number of years as we kind of grow into our jobs and vocations, especially as a young church too, where you have people all sorts of different levels. Yeah. Kendra, how's the plant doing? Give us an update before we go we leave the interwebs, I guess, is what we do.
Phil's doing great. Phil's just
growing since the last time we asked, eh?
Minute by minute.
Minute by minute. Love it. Well, seriously, we thank everybody for listening. I've always said, just listening back, if I was a part of a community, this is super helpful just to hear people who are on the ground, living real lives, who aren't in a bubble, being able to wrestle and discuss this stuff is so, I think, good. Thank you for joining us. This coming Sunday, we have something special if you're listening the week of. this release this coming Sunday. If you want to join us, we're hosting an event this Sunday evening, August the 9th, called Racism in the Church. It's happening online on Zoom at 7 p.m. We have a number of guests coming just to share around this idea of race and racism in the church, and I'm just going to be, I think, a real learning time for us as we listen. So you can register for that at mypraxis.church/racism and the church. That'll just get you the credentials to log in to that. We hope you can join us. There is no Faith for Exiles teaching or anything like that this Sunday. It's going to just be that as we focus our time and our attention. And I'm really excited to announce that in a few weeks time, on August 23rd, these guys, I know I'm kind of helping lead some of the discussion, but these guys are going to lead our Sunday teaching, and we're going to take over, the after party is going to take over kind of our Sunday morning gathering, as these guys are going to, us together, are going to kind of conclude Faith for Exiles. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to do one more release of the after show. It's going to take over on Sunday, and it'll be kind of a final recap of all that we've talked about and all that we've wrestled through, the 5 principles and the things that we're feeling and experiencing. So we hope you can join us over the summer. Other than that, enjoy your life, friends. Hopefully you can go into the world. Guys, I'm really just thankful for your input, and I know we could go on hours talking about this, but our prayer is that as a community, you would just go and live in the way of Jesus. And I'm just really excited about the future days. So have an amazing week. We will talk to you soon. You can find this on anywhere you find a podcast, as well as YouTube and Facebook. Tell your friends and tell them to listen, and I think this has been great. We'll talk to you soon. Au revoir, my friends. Peace. Give us other buys in different languages. Yerviderci, is that how you say it?
Vaccine.
All right. Kev, benvenu.
See ya.
Kendra, got one? Aloha.
I don't know.
What? Yeah, aloha is hi.
It means hello and goodbye.
Yeah, it means both.
Yeah.
Shalom, love it.
Well, peace. What's wrong with peace?
Peace.
Okay, I'm
Peace
just saying
to you.
it's not for goodbye.
I love it. Peace, my friends. Have an amazing week.